Imagine a wedding day. You see dozens of couples all dressed up, celebrating together, but it's one single huge.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at how sometimes seemingly separate events, they converge, don't they? And they end up reshaping the political picture.
Absolutely. Things happening continents apart can be surprisingly connected.
Exactly. And today we're diving into one of those moments. We've got a presidential golf trip overseas happening right alongside this, well, intensifying legal and social storm back home.
You're talking about President Trump's recent trip to Scotland.
That's the one. 5 days, mostly on the golf course, while the Epstein fallout was really gaining traction again in the U.S. That renewed focus, on Jeffrey Epstein, his connections, the whole thing.
Right.
So our mission today really is to explore how these things are linked. We'll look at public feelings, shifting political friendships, maybe, and of course, those approval ratings.
Yeah, and our goal is to sort of peel back the layers here. We've got news reports, analyses. We want to get beyond just what happened.
Right.
We need to understand why it matters. What does it tell us about the bigger political story, especially things like public trust and what's happening within his own base? We've pulled out the key bits from the sources you gave us.
Okay, great. So let's unpack the trip itself first. 5 days in Scotland. A lot of it spent at his properties, right?
Mm-hmm. Trump Turnberry, that's on the West Coast.
Yeah.
And then he was opening a new course, too.
Yes, up north. Near where his mother was from, he often mentions that.
He does. There's clearly a personal connection for him there.
But it wasn't just golf, was it? There was an official side to it.
Well, yes. I mean, besides obviously putting some miles between himself and the Epstein story hitting the headlines back home.
Which was probably convenient timing.
You could say that. But yeah, there were actual meetings scheduled. He was supposed to meet with Keir Starmer, the British PM, and the head of the EU Commission. Talks about trade and tariffs.
So working vacation kind of framing.
That was the idea.
But Scotland wasn't exactly rolling out the welcome mat everywhere, was it? There were protests.
Oh, yeah. Pretty large ones, sustained throughout the visit. And more were apparently planned.
Now, protests aren't exactly new for any world leader, but these felt noticeable. The scale, the feeling behind them.
Definitely. We saw reports quoting Fiona McPherson, I think. She's a dual U.S.-Scottish citizen.
Right. What did she say?
She basically captured that local feeling, saying something like, politically, Scotland might have to play nice with the U.S., but that doesn't mean people approve of certain things. She called it an embarrassment.
So a real tension there between the official welcome and how some people actually felt.
A definite tension.
And like we said, Trump's seen plenty of protests, but being thousands of miles away in Scotland, it does provide a sort of physical buffer, I suppose.
Geographically, yes.
Yeah.
But the question is, did that translate politically? Because back home,
a different kind of distance was maybe opening up, especially with this Epstein shadow looming larger.
and you could see it almost immediately in the numbers. His approval rating dipped, lowest of the second term, actually.
Wow.
But here's the really striking part among independents. It hit an all-time low, lower than any point in his first or second term.
An all-time low with independence. That's significant. That's not just noise.
No, it signals something specific is happening there.
But what's fascinating and maybe a bit counterintuitive is the contrast, right? Because while independents were dropping off,
His Republican support held pretty firm, still around 90% in most polls. Gallup showed maybe a tiny 2% shift, but basically solid.
so it really highlights this split, this fault line in his support base.
It does. And that drop among independents, it didn't just happen overnight with the Epstein news. Their numbers had already been, well, cratering, as one analysis put it, since last summer.
Since last summer, what was happening then?
That was around the time of the assassination attempt, the RNC convention. There was a period where some people perceived him as having maybe mellowed out a bit.
Okay, I remember that perception.
But then, come the early months of this year, his administration rolled out some pretty shocking efforts, some dramatic performances, particularly on immigration enforcement.
Right.
And that seems to have alienated quite a few people, especially those independents who maybe thought he'd moderated. So that downward trend was already there.
And the Epstein stuff just poured fuel on it for them.
It certainly seems to have accelerated it, yeah.
Yeah.
Added a whole new dimension.
Which brings us to another really interesting wrinkle here. How this is playing out within his own movement, or close to it.
You mean the Magoff stars?
Yeah, or just influential figures who you'd normally expect to be defending him staunchly. Now, some are being, well, critical, skeptical about the Epstein explanations.
It is surprising. You're seeing people like Elon Musk publicly raising questions.
Continuously, yeah. And Rupert Murdoch, too, his paper, The Wall Street Journal, has actually broken some key stories kind of illuminating the Trump-Epstein links. That's a significant shift. When figures like Musk and Murdoch, who've been supportive or at least influential in conservative media, start asking hard questions.
It raises eyebrows.
Mm-hmm.
And it feeds into some, let's say, provocative theories.
But Charlemagne's Thakkel's idea.
Exactly. He floated this possibility that if Trump gets definitively named in the Epstein files in a damning way, this could be the perfect excuse for Republican elites to stage a political coup and basically push him out.
Well, a political coup, that's strong language.
It is. But when you see people like Murdoch and Musk, who are, pretty key figures in his orbit, now looking critical on this issue, it makes you wonder.
It adds a layer of plausibility, maybe, to that kind of speculation.
And looking at the broader base, the sort of Trump-trained folks, there's this observation floating around that for a lot of them, it isn't the usual criticisms, the xenophobia, the racism, the bigotry, things critics always bring up.
Right.
It's specifically the Epstein connection that seems to be causing some turbulence. It hits differently. It's like it crosses a different kind of line for some supporters.
That seems to be the suggestion.
And maybe, digging a bit deeper, maybe it's not that these supporters want off the train altogether.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more like they want Trump to get in line with them on this.
Yeah.
They see Epstein and they want justice. They don't want anyone getting a pass.
So it's like they held Fauci or Obama or Hillary accountable in their minds?
Exactly. They expect the same standard applied here. No passes given, regardless of who it is. It's a demand for accountability, even from within the base, specifically on this issue.
Which really loops back to this whole question of public trust and information, doesn't it? Because regarding the Epstein files themselves, nobody seems happy.
No, there's a pretty universal feeling, it seems, that not enough has come out. A sense that there's something more going on there.
Just a general suspicion.
A deep suspicion. And what's really feeding it, arguably, is this perception. Okay, maybe there are legitimate reasons not to release everything, national security, whatever.
Yeah, that's possible.
But it looks very suspicious, as one source put it, when people who were demanding release suddenly go quiet or change their tune right after they get a look at the files.
Yeah, that pattern does raise questions for people. It triggers that sort of collective spidey sense, Something feels off.
Exactly. Even for people who weren't maybe following it super closely before, that kind of thing makes them wonder.
And Trump's own way of handling the allegations, it doesn't seem to be calming those waters.
How so?
Well, he often just rails against it.
Well,
uses the familiar attacks, brings up Obama, Hillary.
The standard playbook, almost a knee-jerk reaction to bad news. You can actually track the mentions of Epstein go up, mentions of Obama and Hillary go up in his statements too.
Right. But is he answering the actual specific questions about his own connections or knowledge?
Not really. It's mostly deflection. He's not answering any real questions, as the analysis suggests.
And in today's climate, that might not fly.
Probably not. Relying on the old material, the deflections, it's just not going to be good enough for a lot of people. Especially, in a society that kind of feeds off conspiracy theories when there's an information vacuum.
People want clarity, not just the usual political spin.
They seem to, yeah. This kind of situation just fuels more speculation otherwise.
Now, obviously the Democrats are seeing a political opportunity here.
Oh, for sure. They're just jumping on the political bandwagon. It's kind of low-hanging fruit for them.
Unites their side.
While potentially dividing Republicans. Classic political maneuvering.
But what seems really distinct here is that the core aimer, the real demand for justice about Epstein, it feels very strong on the conservative side, too.
That's a key observation. It's very clearly on the conservative side as well. It's not just a partisan attack line from Democrats. There's genuine outrage among many conservatives and independents.
So it's an issue that unites Democrats but actually creates these fissures on the right, a really unusual dynamic.
Very much so.
Okay, so let's try and pull the main threads together from this deep dive. Trump's trip to Scotland gave him some breathing room, geographically speaking.
A momentary reprieve.
Yeah. But back home, this Epstein fallout seems to be causing some real shifts. We're seeing that erosion of support among independents.
A significant drop there.
And maybe more surprisingly, these cracks appearing even among influential conservative voices. People like Musk, outlets like the Wall Street Journal connected to Murdoch.
That questioning from within, or adjacent to, His usual sear of support is notable.
And underlying it all is this deep public desire for answers, for transparency about Epstein, that Trump's current approach just doesn't seem to be satisfying.
Right, there's a real hunger for information, and suspicion grows easily when it's not forthcoming.
So thinking about all that, it leaves us with a pretty interesting question for you, the listener, to ponder.
Hmm.
Well, given that even a base that seems incredibly loyal can demand accountability on certain specific issues, like this Epstein situation,
Right.
and knowing how quickly suspicion and frankly conspiracy theories can spread when questions aren't answered directly, how does all this change what it means to be, a well-informed citizen today? How do you navigate this interplay of trust, information, and these constantly shifting political winds?
That's a deep one. How do you sort through the noise and the spin? Especially when even established alliances seem to be shifting based on specific events. It's definitely something to think about.